Hey guys, can you hear me? Hello? Hello? I think you can hear me. Okay. So the funny thing about this is that I felt like I was on a really good sort of emotional or energy jaunt for it. And this is called Take Your House Back Underlined. I felt like I was on a really good energy jaunt. And then of course that live just it said going live and it just kept going and going and going. Now recently many of my homies in this kind of lifestyle will probably recognize this, but recently I've had quite a bit of let's just say technological interference where I'm feeling good about something and or I know what I'm going to say and that's when it starts fucking with me, or I have this horrible terrible cell phone and it's screwing with me and blah blah blah. Okay, let's get positive though, because these people are trying to this is exactly what they want from me. So, take your house back. What are we talking about here? Well, what they want is you to be a slave. You are a slave, Neo, right? They want you to be a slave. They want you to have just an awful life with nothing good happening, and that's basically it. They want you to not be in control of your life. However, if you are in control of your life, then they want to corrupt you, because what they want for you is misery. What they want for you is suffering. But if they can't get that, or they probably can get that if they corrupt you, because these people all around you, fucking with you, they're the most miserable, suffering people you've ever met. But they want you to be in a state of abject misery and then abject poverty as they drive you into the ground and screw you enough to get you homeless, or screw with you enough that you basically react to them in an emotional way, and they can use that as an excuse to get you sent to a mental institution or to get you locked up in jail or something, whatever. They have their Orwellian wellness checks now these days. Yep. They really want you to be dead, right? They want you to be either the living dead, be one of the dead, like, We Are the Dead. Is there a song called We Are the Dead or some album or something? Basically, you have the dark occultists, and they refer to normal people like you and me, not really normal people like you and me if you're watching something like this, but they refer to normal people as the dead, because these people have been fucking killed and destroyed. People like most of the people in my family. By the way, I think, well, it seems like I'm a targeted individual. I will say, though, it seems like my entire family, basically, like it's almost as if, now, I'm not sure that this seems likely unless this is some kind of big simulation, but it's almost as if my whole family was basically like kind of named and kind of arranged to lead down to me and to screw with me. And say if I am and I'm not saying that I believe that. I'm just saying it seems kind of interesting. Now, say if I am a targeted individual, then perhaps that would be the case. I don't know how far back they plan these things. They plan like political stuff very far back. Like you look at their Club of Rome, you look at their I don't know, essentially you look at everything that Alan Watt talks about, and it seems like it's all very very much planned. It's planned far in advance, it's planned ahead of time, and they have their documents to show it, such as, for example, The Next Million Years by Charles Galton Darwin, who is, oh boy, Charles Darwin's what? His grandson. And then they released this scholarly book, The Next Million Years, where he basically lays out like their whole agenda and just like the whole kind of philosophy behind what they're talking about. Oh, the wild man must be at the top because the wild man must have no master. But then, of course, he must be the master of everybody else. Now, interestingly, they say that there is no way to like teach a master to be a master, and they say that in that book. I'm not sure that's the case. Check out the book, The Master Key System. From what little I've read of it, just what little I've read of it, and I have read all of The Next Million Years, but I am reading The Master Key System right now. What little I've read of it, it seems like they teach you to be a master in that book. Now, is it a good master or a bad master? I don't know. I remember that video of Bill Clinton sitting there, and he's sitting very, very still, and they're doing his like hair or makeup or something, and he's sitting like sort of eerily still. And that seems to me, well, that's something straight from the master key system, whether he was thinking of it or not. Their main practice is sitting still, and they say sit still, like basically not rigid, but sit absolutely still for like 15 minutes, maybe once or twice a day, until you regain full control of your body, they say. And it's an incredible claim, but if you actually do it, it's one of the most powerful spiritual practices you can ever get. Adyashanti has true meditation, and true meditation is pretty similar to that, but he's not quite as focused on being still. I'm not sure which is better. It seems like true meditation might be a little more organic and natural. And if enlightenment is the natural state, as Adyashanti talks about, then true meditation might be more of the way. And he has a book called The Way of Liberation where he talks about that, as well as a book called True Meditation. Whereas sitting still might be sort of the way of the psychopath. So again, you go back to that Bill Clinton video, and he's sitting very still. He's sitting so still that like people put clips of that video in and into their videos, and they're like, look at this guy. Like, is he dead or something? Like, it's terrifying. It's like, no, I think he might just be one of these people who has been who is like a supposed master. And I don't mean master in a good sense, but perhaps he is kind of like the master of his body or something. And so look at him later in his life. He looks like a freaking zombie. Like he looks like he looks like a leper actually. Like check out his face later in his life. He looks awful. But he is sitting very still in that video, and that may not seem like much to you, but I would then say, what about the Jesus quote, be still and know that I am God? Or what about the Ryan Holiday book, Stillness is the Key? He has various titles for his books, and one of his books is literally called Stillness is the Key. And then in the master key system, they have a practice where it's about just sitting still until you regain full control of your body. And in that book, early on, they say basically like you have a storehouse of wonders or something, but if you do not claim it, then somebody else will. You could say that's demons. You could say that's just sort of manipulation psychologically from outside or whatever. But if you do not claim it, somebody else will. And then you see the video rather. It looks like a picture because he's so still. Bill Clinton sitting there totally still. And that's probably not nearly the only thing that you'll see about that. Otherwise, I will also point to Zen, or rather what Zen mind, beginner's mind. Yeah. And then they say good posture is Buddha nature. They early on, like basically the first part of that book, they talk about good posture, and they're like, right. They say like you are enlightened if you have good posture. And then all I'd have to do is point to basically anybody on TV. Show me the motherfucker who's slouching. Show me the motherfucker who's hunching. Those motherfuckers are very still and they have very good posture. So the master key system, to go back to the next million years, I think that might be actually like a master's training program. But is it good or not? I don't know. I'll say a strange thing from my life. Sometimes you get little like intuitive messages. You might say it's a thought. You might say it's the still small voice, or you might say it's some kind of manipulation or basically somebody trying to like scare you away from something. But like not early on actually, but at one point when I was like doing the master key system, I've never done the whole thing, but it is actually sort of like, it's like a course basically. It's like a process, but you could also just read it like a book. At one point when I was doing it, I got like a sense of like, you will turn into a monster if you do this or something, or like I had a thought of that, or like basically like the voice of the conscience or whatever. And at this point, I'm not sure what's intuition. You can go back to some of my gang stalking videos. I'd say what the video abuse, and then the video the out, all the way through love period. And in one of them, I talk about like I arrived at this gas station and all these people were basically, it seemed like they were basically waiting for me there. It may sound insane. I think it's the one after the out, actually, if you want to check it out. I think it's the Sora actually, right? Whatever. It may sound like crazy talk, but check out the video if you actually want to hear about it. And then, and by the way, most of the, I would presume actually that most of the people who would be likely to call me crazy for saying that are perhaps just the people who would know that I'm not bullshitting you about that. So I guess I'm talking to the real people here because I may not be saying anything that anybody else doesn't know. I'm not quite sure about that, but it seems like there are a lot of people around who treat me in a lot of bad ways and in a sense that would seem improbable because I don't know them, but it seems like they know to fucking target me. Again, that may sound crazy, but I think a lot of the people who would call me crazy might be doing that shit to me. So it might just be gaslighting, right? Anyway, so to get back to it, I had the sense of like you will turn into a monster if you do this or something like the sitting still, and I'm not sure if that was like an intuitive thing, like from a good place or from a true place, or if that was basically like perhaps something trying to knock me off course. You could even just say Eckhart Tolle, the voice in the head. And he has a book called Stillness Speaks, by the way, the one that people rarely talk about between The Power of Now and A New Earth. He has the power of now, so it's like the present moment, and then stillness speaks, it's like stillness, and then a new earth, that's like, basically you then interacting with the world from a place perhaps of now and or of stillness. But Eckhart Tolle, you could say just the voice in the head, like, basically like trying to scare you. But it was strange, and I took it a little seriously. And right now I am reading the Master Key System, but I'm not actually doing it. If I were doing it, I'd probably be doing it at a faster pace because I have the reading set to be like 200 days, and it's like week one, week two, etc. I think it's going to be more than 20 weeks that it takes to read. I haven't calculated the end date for this based on the 200-day, but I'm on day 4 of reading. Sundays off. In any case, yeah, so I'm not quite sure about whether sitting still is very good because Ryan Holiday, he's not a great guy. He doesn't. I don't know him personally, but he was in Hoaxed. He shares some good stuff, but I don't think Ryan Holiday is not part of the control system. In fact, I think he takes a lot of the Stoicism stuff, which has a real emphasis on capital N nature and a real emphasis on sort of discerning the way things are, or the way things work, and going with that. And he takes that and he just sort of takes out a message. It seems like, anyway, he takes out a message of like basic empowerment stuff, or like this is how you can succeed in your own life without the capital N nature at all. Basically, it's more of the Luciferian or the satanic thing. Well, I guess Luciferian in terms of, well, I guess satanic in terms of Paradise Lost, right? Whatever. In terms of like, we don't care about the way things are. We don't care about the natural order. We don't care about like what proper reproduction is, or whatever else you may like look at in terms of the way of capital N nature. We just care about getting what we want and doing what we'd like. And so then you have Ryan Holiday writing all these books about Stoicism or talking about Stoicism stuff, and yet he seems to leave out all the really strict and or at least the really hard stuff they have about like following the way of nature. And then you'll talk about like morality, but he'll be like, well, you think you're courageous to not take a certain medical intervention? You guys are actually cowards. It's like he actually said something like that in Courage is Calling. You can check it out, unless they Mandela affected out of there or something, right? You can check it out. I kept like I think at least multiple times, maybe literally multiple times, I went back to that audiobook after stopping listening to it. And I don't consider audiobooks reading, but I went back to that audiobook and I was like, like I like listening to his other audiobooks, whether or not he seems like a left guy or like a guy left hand path, right? Or like a guy who's kind of a controller. Like it was still, or whether it seems like he's got particularly deep stuff. And I don't even know if I had gotten into like seeing what Stoicism was all about. At a certain point I had, but it's like, okay, so he seems like a little superficial, but I like listening to his stuff. And he reads it and it's interesting. You get to hear him say the N word in almost every book. He finds a way to say the N word in almost every book. That's like in the movie Conspiracy Theory, where Mel Gibson is behind like the agent in the car, and he's like, "You're one of the smart ones, aren't you?" And he in the movie he's talking about agents, but of course the guy is a black guy in the movie. So I think you see enough movies and you discern enough stuff, and it's like I think they're probably saying something really nasty about black people there. And of course it is like a pretty smart looking guy, a pretty like collected together, like decidedly not like hood looking guy whom he's talking to. And so it's just like there's so many layers, and there are so many layers that in fact you can just go watch a movie and you could probably like find like 7 or 8 layers that nobody has ever mentioned in public. Like you can look into your Alan Watt or your Matt McKinley or whatever, not saying you can look into your truther people and perhaps, or Mark Passio or whatever, and perhaps nobody has ever pointed this out in public. Like that's how many things are just underneath. And yet it's not like, oh, like these, it would have just gone past these people. Perhaps people have noticed these things, but it's just like, it's just everywhere, right? In Hollywood, etc. So, in any case, I'm not totally sure about the stillness stuff. I think the stillness stuff might essentially be kind of short-circuiting nature, and so you take total control of your life, but you basically become a psychopath. I'm not sure. All I'm saying here, well, I'm saying many things here, but I will point back to the Bill Clinton's thing and say he is not a good man. He seems like indeed a very evil man, and he sat very still. All right. So what are we doing here? Well, what we're doing here is take your house back, right? And so in the interest of that, I've been terrified. I've been pretty scared recently. And one person I've been watching has been, I thought Shelly the Seeker. I don't know if that changed or whatever. Maybe I just got it wrong. But no, it's Stephanie the Seeker. And she has some helpful or some good stuff about gang stalking. She has a video. It's like 40-ish minutes long, 39 and change, I think, and the thumbnail says like gang stalking masterclass or something, and it actually is really good. You can go check that video out, but I'm not sure. It's like you want to have discernment, and it's like so. And she talks about it as well. She's like, well, of course, people aren't necessarily very trusting when they become TIs or when they're treated this way. And it's like, or when you just look into truth stuff, I would say it's like you'll find fewer people who call more people control figures and basically like disinformation agents than the people you'll find in the truth community. Like, because the other people, they don't know these people's names. It's like, if you go really into the truth community, you'll have somebody who knows the names of like 21, 25 truthers, and they'll be like, every single one of them is a disinformation agent. But if you listen to them, they could still tell you some good stuff. It's like, that's how skeptical people are, because you realize how many people are fucking lying all the time, right? It's not just the people on TV. Like, it might indeed be, as Alan Watt talked about, like, he's like, yeah, you'd be surprised how many people like on Patriot Radio and stuff might. I'm saying might. I think he said are actual agents, like are actually just put there to like basically lead people in certain directions, and it seems like they're going off the mainstream path. And they are in some ways, and this is sort of me talking now, not me saying what he said. It seems like they're going off the mainstream path, but that doesn't mean that, like Matt McKinley talks about, they aren't a part of the graduated animal farm. It's like you get out of the hen house of left and right and just watching TV, and then you got all these people, and it's like, oh, I'm going to go over to that Alex Jones plantation. And then you realize, like, wait a second, there's a comedian named Bill Hicks, right? Etc. Right? But anyway, so I watched the Stephanie the Seeker thing, and see, I really liked it. One thing you'll find in the TI community, though, that I haven't looked, just like 2 or 3 weeks ago, maybe I was like asking people like where are resources for like gang stalking? Like, how do you find out about this stuff? And I've started to like find some more stuff. And one thing you'll find, and I've got a video coming about it, by the way, check it out. I think it might be a pretty good one. It'll have sonic footage, I think. But one thing you'll find is you get like, I don't know. You get a lot of people going in one way or the other, and it seems like a big part of the community is very much Christian oriented. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, because I think Christianity might be the way. I think Jesus might be the way. I think it really might be Jesus and then everyone else. And that's why it's like totally like common and okay to like make fun of Jesus and do all the sacrilegious stuff with him. But you'll never see somebody on TV make fun of Buddhism. Like, not really. You won't see somebody on TV make fun of Islam, not really. But you will see people on TV just rip Christianity to shreds. You'll see it with Scientology as well. I think it's interesting that I have the book Prayers That Rout Demons and Break Curses. Above Win Bigly on my little stack of books here. And then below Win Bigly, I have Scientology, The Fundamentals of Thought. You might think those things don't go together. Somebody actually once literally drew a picture of me holding a rosary and holding a book called Dianetics and sitting in a meditation posture at the same time. I don't know. I think that maybe there are just so many layers, and maybe many of the layers, or most of them, at least sort of on a superficial level, or what gets presented to you, will have bad stuff involved, and yet some of them may give you more truth than others. And I think, just like it's okay to make fun of Scientology, which is, it's stated as a religion, so it's like, but it's okay to make fun of it. And by the way, Scientology that had Tom Cruise going on TV and arguing with Matt Lauer about how you shouldn't give psychiatric drugs to people. That's what he talked about. You can check out that beautiful interview. I'm not saying Tom Cruise isn't a control agent, but I am saying he's maybe one of the only people I've ever seen in the public sphere to ever speak out against psychiatric drugs, at least in that kind of way. He's basically saying it's all bullshit, right? And I might agree with him there. But you're able to make fun of Scientology, and you're able to make fun of Christianity and all the other religions. It's like, you try making fun of Buddhism on TV, you'll probably get a fucking fine. You make fun of Jesus or Christianity, that's fine. You make fun of Scientology or L. Ron Hubbard, that's totally fine. It's like, and then you look into Christianity and you look into Scientology, and it's like, wow, these things are actually saying stuff that might help you. So, I don't know. But in any case, to get back to the Stephanie the Seeker thing, I'm not sure. Like, basically, I'm not totally sure that that's not another layer of psyop, and it's a layer that's basically like, okay, like basically the only power that's powerful enough to stop, not only to get you out of the gang stalking stuff, but just to help you in general, would be Christianity and Jesus. And I'm not saying that's not the case. It seems like it might be, and I want to speak very carefully here. However, I will say that I'm not certain that it's really not just sort of like a disempowerment thing, and a thing where the thing they are most afraid of you doing is caring about what's true or not, and is like saying, basically, go back to the 10 commandments. It's thou shalt not bear false witness. They are most afraid of you, and you check everybody in your life. The least common person you're going to find is an honest person. The least common person in your life is a person who just does not lie. I don't know if you know a single person, anyone who ever watches this, I don't know if you know a single person who just does not lie. And even would probably every person in your life would even admit to it. They'd probably say, like, yeah, oh yeah, I lie sometimes. Like, oh yeah, I'm not totally honest. It's like, I think that's the rarest thing in the world. And I think that's the most empowered person in the world, as I talked about in the last live video, The Structure, an honest man, as Dave Mustaine, who's probably a control guy, hence on the final album, the final song, except for the Metallica cover. And maybe perhaps that was a Metallica song he had something to do with before he got kicked out of the band. It was on their second album, but I don't know what they had kicking around. He says, you gave me my name, or you gave me gold, you gave me my name. And that's David Scott Mustaine, like the Scottish Rite, Michael Scott. That said, though, Dave said, an honest man stands tall. And as Mark Passio says, if you think like this is a huge contradiction, he says, look, it's a fallacy to say that just because I don't agree with everything somebody says, that means that everything they say is wrong, right? So you find, basically you find what seems true, and you look at all the other stuff as well, right? So I think, so I'm not sure that this TI community does not have some influence of like, okay, what we're really worried about is people being honest. What we're really worried about is people proverbially taking their house back and basically like living their own life. And that's what we're really worried about. That's why we have the structure of people literally termed a gang, or it's called Quantico, according to what the Ted Gunderson, he referred to it as Quantico or something. Stephanie said that. I didn't watch far enough in the video maybe to hear him say the word. But and then they have the TV show Quantico. It seems like there's always a TV show, just like the Amazon TV show back in the early 2020s, where they were talking about this big like virus that wasn't actually real, and the bad thing was actually the medical intervention. That was like a an Amazon TV show. Like, come on. Come on. And then they have Fear Inoculum by Tool that came out literally in 2019. Fear Inoculum, and that came out supposedly, and they would have been working on it, I imagine, and titled it, I imagine, supposedly well before anyone in the public knew about like events that might have been coming. It's like, and then of course you have all the like the spars thing, where it's like this big document talking about basically like a rehearsal for what we would do with like in the case of a disease, and it's called SPARS, and it has all this bizarre stuff. And then of course you have the October 2019 rather, simulation of a coronavirus event. It's a simulation that was put on in part by the Bill Gates Foundation. What was it called? You know what? Like I haven't thought about it for a while, so I've been like blanking on the name of it. But you can go look it up. They had like a big simulation event. I think it might have been in New York City, where they had all these like big name companies like involved with it, and they sat around this table and said, "This is what we do in the case of like a global coronavirus event." And they literally had that in 2019, the month before there was the supposed outbreak, right? Which would have been November 2019. I mean, it's all in your face, right? But going back to it, I think with the TI community, one thing that I might watch out for is I'm not sure how much of it is not just trying to get you back into a pen, is not just indeed a graduated animal farm. And so I'm not sure how much of the Christian angle. Look, I'm not trying to blaspheme here, because it might be a very not good thing to do so, and it also might be leading people off of a good path. And I certainly don't want to do that either. I'm trying not to bear false witness here, and also I'm looking to say, hey, look, it seems like after I basically going away from that Stephanie the Seeker video, it was pretty helpful. The gang stalking masterclass thing, it seemed very helpful. However, thinking about it in terms of like, basically like basically like satanic people trying to kill your soul and stuff, perhaps that's still yet another trap. I'm not saying that it is, but it seems like it might be a possibility that that might just be another trap where what they're really trying to do is to get you to give your life over to them, and to get you to be another dishonest person who just buys into something. And I'm not trying to blaspheme here, and I'm not trying to lead you off the right path, but they want to get you to buy into something that will ultimately just keep you in a cycle of fear, and ultimately just keep you in a cycle of subservience to something. That said, there are a crap load of people in the mainstream who will say something very similar to that about Christianity in particular, such as Amon Amarth with Slaves of Fear, religion is what makes you blind, etc. There are a crap load of people who will specifically say stuff like that, seemingly in service of being a psychopath. And that's not what I'm trying to do either. So I'm just saying, take your house back and be honest. Be honest, be discerning. And one of the discernment things that I would have to say is a very, very quick way to seem to like get back into your equilibrium would be to, for example, do the rosary, do Catholic prayers, or check out prayers that rout demons and break curses. Very quick way, or reading the Bible, for instance. Like if I was listening to Second Corinthians last night, and it wasn't reading, it was listening, because listening isn't reading. You can listen to a bedtime story as a child. That doesn't mean you read the book. That means someone else read it to you. I'm saying that because there are so many people who will say like, oh, I read that book, but what they did is listen to an audiobook. It's like, okay, so when your parents read you a book as a child before you knew how to read, did you read that book? But how could you have if you didn't know how to read yet, right? So there's discernment there as well. There are so many things in society where it's like, feel better. You read all these books because you listened to them, right? It's like, no, reading is another thing, and there's a reason why I bought a bunch of Ryan Holiday audiobooks rather than reading the actual books, and that was because I didn't feel like I had a bunch of emotional bandwidth to be reading through books, but I wanted to hear what was in them. And so I listened to them instead. So I didn't read The Obstacle is the Way, but I did listen to it, right? Okay, but in any case, what do we got here? So take your house back. All right, take your house back. Be honest. There are two rules in RPG life: be honest and be good. If you follow those two rules, if you are an honest person, you're the 5%, or it seems like you are. Maybe it might be that way. You are the 5% if you're an honest person. It might be you are, as opposed to the 10% or the 85%. If you're an honest person, everybody hates you. If you're an honest person, then sort of by default you're going to be a huge individual, and then all these people like potentially who might gang stalk you or whatever, or just all the even without that, if you don't buy into that or whatever, or you haven't seen it, just the sense of like all these people around you who buy into the common narrative, and then they kind of bully you, and anytime you say something that goes off the common narrative, even in the United States of America, such a free place and a free thinking place, so many people will just be like, you're crazy, you're not allowed to say that, I saw it on TV and that means it's real, and if you question whether it's real or not, then you're out of your mind. And don't you ever go telling a psychiatrist or anybody in a fucking so-called hospital or something, basically anything about like, I'm not saying lie to them, but as they say, I think in the catechism, or as I heard on relevant radio, which itself, etc. You don't lying. You can be deceptive. I'm not saying to be deceptive, but there is such a thing as withholding information in a deceptive way, or selectively telling people things to try to get them to believe something that's not true, etc. You can certainly do that, and people do it all the time on TV and stuff. However, you are not like, you don't have to tell everybody everything, right? In fact, as Adyashanti talked about, if you just dump all your trauma and like what you think about everybody onto everybody else, then it's probably going to be kind of like painful for them, and that might not be the nicest thing to do, right? Be honest, be good. But I would suggest that if you're ever in a situation with a psychiatrist or something, if you start saying like things that you've observed that aren't like mainstream talking points, they're probably going to hit they're probably going to hit you with so many designations. They're probably going to hit you with so many medications. You'll be basically, you'll probably go the rest of your life not being able to think a straight sentence, right? I mean, that's an exaggeration, maybe, but somebody who considers themselves the arbiter, or somebody who considers himself or herself the arbiter of truth, that's somebody who, when they can prescribe something to you, you probably don't want to just talk about like all the things that may or may not be lies, right? in the common narrative. And it's like, oh, they considered themselves the arbiter of truth. Well, yeah, quite. That's easy to prove. A psychiatrist sort of works. It seems anyway that they work under the idea, the sponsoring thought, as they might say in Conversations with God, that they are the arbiter of truth. And you know how you can discern that? You can basically say, well, what do they consider a crazy thing to say? What do they consider something where if you say it as pure content, if you say, oh, I don't believe X, Y, or Z happened, or I think it's actually this way, or it seems to me that that's actually false, if you say something like that, minus any emotion, like aside from any emotional stuff, aside from any patterns of thinking or behavior, if you say like a certain statement about what seems to be true or not true, they very well might consider you clinically crazy. They might diagnose you clinically crazy just for saying, I think that is not true. That's a mainstream narrative, or I think this might be the case, or it seems like that might be the way, or whatever. If you say something like that, they may very well diagnose you with something, and that seems to indicate that their job seems to be, we are the arbiters of truth. Because if this person says something that I would say, or that I would not believe to be true, or that I would say is not true, or that I would not believe to be true, then I will write them down as paranoid or a schizophrenic or whatever. And that's not them saying that you have emotional problems. That's not them necessarily saying that you have a pattern of thinking that's unhelpful for you. That's them saying they said a statement about the way things might be, and I consider that statement not to be true, and therefore I will call them crazy and clinically crazy because of it. That is them being the arbiter of truth. Okay, now we will go on. Okay, so what are we doing here? So actually, I'm going to do some affirmations. Now, I'm not necessarily going to say what the affirmations are, but I have this thing where I'm writing down affirmations every night and every morning. And It's check out How to Fail at Almost Everything and Still Win Big by Scott Adams. He also talks about it a bit in Win Bigly and elsewhere. I think he might mention it in the interview stuff that Tim Ferriss had with him in the book Tools of Titans. But Scott Adams talks about how powerful affirmations can be. I've seen in my own life how powerful affirmations can be. I've seen the past like 5 years, well, I guess the past 6 years or so now, like a direct example of like I did affirmations and bam, bam, right away, like I got exact, like literally the next day, that affirmation turned out to be the case, right? So, and as Scott talks about in Win Bigly, I wrote affirmations saying I, Scott Adams, will be a famous cartoonist, and I am now writing this book on a beach from my laptop, or from on my laptop from a beach, sipping a nice drink, and I am a famous cartoonist. That's how he put it. He wrote an affirmation, he got it. He has a list of things in How to Fail at Almost Everything and Still Win Big where he wrote affirmations and he got it. Then he wrote affirmations and he got it. Then he wrote affirmations and he got it. And he even later on in the book, or maybe in that chapter, I think maybe later on though, maybe in an appendix, he talks about like, or maybe it's in Win Bigly, I don't know. He talks about I think it was in the earlier book. It's a trilogy, the Winning Trilogy, or it became one anyway. Or he referred to it at least once as that. Scott did, Winning Trilogy, but he talks about how it actually might make sense, or not that it would make sense or not, or that it wouldn't, but he talks about one way where it might indeed make sense that affirmations would actually have that kind of power. So let's do our affirmations right now. And it's like, okay, Matt, how do you do the affirmations? Well, I'm sort of following sort of what Scott talked about as a format. He didn't list like a full format, but basically it seemed like he would write down a certain phrase like 10 times or 15 times or whatever, and he basically, it's write it down and then envision that being the case while you're writing it. What I've been doing is writing down a phrase like 15 times, and then I've had a sense of connecting my breathing while I'm writing it. And I tend to maybe do a little visualization as well, but it seems like write it down 15 times in a row and connect your breathing while you're doing it. Essentially, as Michael Brown talks about in the presence process, breathe without pauses. In breath, into the out breath, into the in breath, into the out breath, into the in breath. And I found that it's been quite difficult emotionally to do these affirmations. You might not think it, but it feels like running a marathon just to write a sentence 15 times in a row. I could probably write 15 sentences in a row and it would be a lot faster and it would feel like a lot less of a marathon. But doing it this way, it feels like I'm really pushing against something. And that might mean that something creative is going on. So let's see and let's do it. And I may talk a little less here, but actually, what is it? It's 11 now, probably. Yeah, 11:02. 11:02, squiggly equal sign that indicates that it's approximate, because when I actually like start writing it, it's probably going to be a little later than that. But yeah, and it's like, okay, Matt, so this is going to be not very interesting for these next like X minutes. It's like, well, it may not be that interesting. That's an interesting thing to say. However, part of what I'm doing here is the Tony Robbins, how can I do this and enjoy the process? He talks about that in Personal Power 2, probably talks about that elsewhere as well. But what he talks about asking questions, and then he says the reticular activating system, or the ROS, and that's interesting because it's like raw, very interesting. I don't know if that's unintentional. You look into enough stuff and it's like, okay, Tony might indeed have been putting something in there. Maybe, maybe not. But he says basically like the reticular activating system, and I don't even think that's necessarily his term for it. Like he didn't necessarily originate that, because I think Scott refers to that term as well in Win Bigly, I think, or maybe it was the prior book. I think it might have been Win Bigly though. And he does mention Tony Robbins, but it seems like it might be prior to Tony. In any case, you ask questions and then you get answers. And one of the questions might be, how can I do this and enjoy the process? And it's like, well, how can I do these affirmations and enjoy the process? Well, maybe doing a video while I'm doing it. Now it's like, well, you could say that sort of scatters your attention, and the master key system might say that's a faulty thing to do. That's fair. However, I haven't been doing it like that in the past X amount of days or whenever I've been doing it before this. And by the way, people use whenever in pretty sloppy way these days. Whenever is essential. When is referring to a certain or a specific time, more or less. Like when I did this, that happened. Whenever is referring to something that happened, like maybe multiple times, or referring to something that you're not quite sure when it happened. Like, well, whenever I did get to the school, this started happening, or like whenever I went to school, this would happen. Rather, but that's different from when I got to the school, this happened. That's more of a definite thing. I think one of the sloppy uses of language, and I'm not sure that it's not a psyop, people started doing. I first heard it in a Stefan Molyneux interview with somebody. He was talking to somebody. In fact, I think it might have been the one where it was like the person got arrested literally during the interview, and then the girl is like there talking for the rest of it. And it's like, oh, this never happened before. Like, but in any case, like Stefan talks to people, etc. And this guy kept saying whenever. He kept saying like, well, whenever I did this or whenever I did that. And I was thinking, I was like, why is he using whenever? I was like, is that like a local thing? Is that like a dialect thing or something? It's like, I think it might be a dialectic thing. Actually, it might be basically the further destruction of the language and people's ability to think, right? To think clearly, to think carefully. Suddenly, it's not when, it's whenever, and suddenly all the lines are blurred and everything, and then people start feeling like everything is just really uncertain and stuff because they keep using whenever all the time when in the actual case of what they're saying, it would be when I did this, that happened. If you say whenever there, unless you're unsure about when it was, or unless it was something about like this happened like on somewhat of a recurring basis or multiple times, and so each time I did this, that happened. Then it should be when. Unless it's those two things, it should be when. And if it's not when, then I think you might be following a psyop, or you might just be sloppy with your language, and perhaps then sloppy with your thought, or with the way that you speak about things. Indeed, with how true what you're saying is. But let's continue, right? Let's continue. So let's start the affirmations, and this may be a lot of silence, but actually it probably should be. So let's see. I'm going to start writing now. 3 down, or 3 done anyway. Okay. 6 down. I guess you can sort of tell my pace. Okay, 9 down. And after this, I'd like to talk about maybe a little bit about it doesn't mean that people were good, because I think a big thing in the TI community is like, oh, all this stuff, it ended up helping me become such a strong person. So I'm almost thankful for it. No, if somebody's doing bad things to you and they apparently they are really bad things, then it doesn't mean that they were good. All right, we're done with 12 now. We got three more to go. All right, so here we go. We're done with the affirmations, and it's like, oh well, why did that take so long, Matt? It's like part of it was writing carefully. If you're writing affirmations, it almost feels like doing a spell, and so I'm not necessarily sure that it's a good thing. Scott Adams, by the way, mentions a Jesus quote very like basically in a very big way uh, towards the middle or maybe even middle end of Win Bigly. He mentions a Jesus quote, and then he mentions a quote by the founding fathers. I don't want to say anything more than that necessarily, and I've already probably ruined it for you or spoiled it if you remember what I say and then you go to it. But so I apologize for that actually. But he essentially like he seems to put Jesus and the founding fathers in the same lineage, and then he seems to kind of put himself and even like even Donald Trump and all these like politicians and whatever, all these fake people into that lineage as well. So that's an interesting thing, and you wouldn't necessarily expect a Jesus quote from Scott, and yet there it is. So interesting. Okay, so that's a decent transition. um Oh, but to go back to it, it's like, okay, so Scott is doing these affirmations, and it's like that's sort of a magical thing, like magic with a K maybe. And so when I'm writing them, it's like, okay, like I feel like I want to write them clearly. I feel like I want to maintain a certain emotion or an emotional field when I'm writing. Like I'm sort of like it almost feels like an OCD exercise while you're doing it, but you could also say it sort of feels like a magical exercise or something. And so in any case, it is quite grueling. It's a grueling thing in a certain sense, and perhaps that seems to indicate that it has a little more power to it than just writing down sentences in general. So it might have taken a long time, but it might have been helpful, or it might have been going down a bad path. So again, I want to be clear about. I'm not necessarily saying these are all good things to do. However, it's like, okay, then why are you doing the math? If I weren't in such a point in my life where like things seem so dire, I'm not sure that I would be sort of pulling out the stops and kind of doing written affirmations every day. But things have gotten pretty dire for me. Okay, so how are they dire? Well, actually, I think that that is a helpful thing to look at here, right? So, hold on. So what do we got? I'm going to read to you something that I wrote on Noble Postscripts on Medium. So if you want to look at that, it's medium.com/@ Matthew Haviland 7, MATTHEWHAVILAND 7. Why do you put your full name there? Well, A, it seems like I'm doxxed to fucking infinity anyway. It seems like everywhere I go, people just have like the whole lowdown of what to do to screw with me. Last job I had, it seemed it basically they were literally saying things, and this was true. Whether or not they were doing something that you might connect with this, they were literally saying things where it was like basically a direct, not even a direct reference. It was like literally what I had just said or heard in my car. They would use that unusual word when I came back. Like for example, as I said in a YouTube video, I was listening to a Sedona Method tape on like they talk about releasing on the emotions, and the particular emotion that I was on was lust. And then before my next pizza delivery, the guy says, okay, Matt has lust. And it's like, are you fucking listening to the shit in my fucking car? Like, so okay, so that's the kind of shit where it's like, if I'm writing my name Matthew Haviland, it's like, you know what, like other people, I would recommend actually, if you still feel like you have some sense of privacy, just like Alan Watt talked about, I'd recommend like maintaining as much privacy as you can, because these people will use it to destroy you, or they'll use it to try, right? But at this point, for me, it seems like everybody who wants to hurt me, it's very easy to find all the information you want about me. I'm not sure where they find it. I'm not sure who gives it to them. But whatever the case may be, it doesn't seem to matter that I say my full name. And so I've sort of broken out into the Michael Malice territory of, hey, let us do the talking, because you guys don't want to basically put your reputation or yourselves on the line talking like this. We're out here talking like this. We're out here trying to move the needle. And I'm not saying that he's not a control figure or Alan Watt isn't. I would say that unless there's something that I don't know about, it would seem that I'm not necessarily a control figure, although perhaps I'm following some script that they're giving me without even realizing it necessarily. But what I am saying is, I feel like at this point, I am Alan Watt with it, with them fucking like putting shit down his chimney and stuff, and like and cutting his fucking brake cords and stuff. I am Michael Malice going out saying, yeah, you know what? Like I've already put myself out here. You guys might want to maintain your privacy. It doesn't matter if I'm private or not, right? So, medium.com /@ Matthew Haviland 7, HAVILAND as in dog. So he loved Big Brother. My last post on this, and I think it is going to be my last post on Medium. Ooh, I have new activity. Huh. Except it says you have no recent activity yet. Why does it say new? I don't know. My last post, and I think I am done with Noble Postscripts. It is, I guess, the postscripts, because it's not as long as American Noble nearly, but it's he loved Big Brother, and then I write the quote positive unquote end of the TI experience in O tier. Check out the website O tier. I'm not. It seems like I criticize them a lot. They have a lot of helpful stuff on there. OTIR .com or .org or something. I'm not trying to drag that guy's name through the mud. I'm just saying it seems like he talks about the eventual what you come to is some quote unquote realization that you are thankful for everything that happened, and it was actually some he said like the sixth and yes, six, interesting, the sixth layer of realization is, and if I get this wrong, I apologize, and check it out, don't just take my word for it, but he says something like, the sixth level of realization is that The amount of shit that goes on, it seems unlikely that just regular people could do it, or even that organizations of people with like even better technology than regular people might have. It seems unlikely that they could even do it. It seems unlikely that it's even aliens or something. It seems indeed that it's some kind of deity, that it's some kind of morally gray, they say, something like that. I think morally gray is a quote, though. Force that is kind of helping you somehow graduate, and then you're thankful for it. And what I would say is, and I'm not trying to talk them down, because I'm not sure that he even has like a bad feeling or a bad intention for saying something like that. But what I might say is that sounds to me a lot like 1984. He loved Big Brother, right? And you know, go read 1984 if you can. It's pretty freaking good. I'd like to read it again. Actually, I read it when I was in middle school, I think, and you know, if I read it again, it'd probably feel like my fucking life. Winston Smith. But I think one of the biggest failures is getting to the end of like all this horrible stuff that might happen to you and saying, you know what, I'm glad that it happened. Or like, actually, maybe not I'm glad that it happened, because in Romans, I think it says in the Bible, God works all things for the good. Like, you know, it doesn't mean that all the evil people weren't being evil. Perhaps you just had someone helping you turn those curses into blessings, right? So I'm not saying that God's bad or anything like that necessarily, but if you thank the people who like killed your dog or something, if that happens to you, Stephanie the Seeker, I think she said her dog like came back with his paw with like a burn mark on it, and it seemed like he had been drugged and stuff, and like all, like if these people are killing pets, if these people are breaking into your home, if these people are harassing you, if these people are spying on you, if these people are lying to you, if these people are pushing your buttons, and say you have something that could be approximated to like PTSD, and then they're pushing your PTSD buttons, think about it in terms of like some Vietnam soldier comes back and you're like, haha, bang, bang, and like you're watching him squirm. It's like that's the kind of shit. Maybe not, you might say, well, Matt, that's unearned valor on a psychological level for you to say that about yourself. Look, that's what it feels like to me when people do this shit to me, right? So if people are intentionally doing that, they're fucking with you in not just a mean way, but an evil way, in a way that could be abusive enough to literally be breaking the law, right? So if you're gonna thank those people for doing that to you, I would say that sounds like he loved Big Brother. But to go back to what I was gonna read, here we go. My assumptions about the quote reverse psychology n dash supposedly gang stalking program period, with comma after the assumptions. 1, they do evil. 2, they seem to try to cause you pain. 3, you may or may not succeed in your life, comma, or in being good, comma, or in being honest. 4, they will remain evil. 5, their ultimate win would be taking credit for your good. 6, if you give them credit, comma, then you have lost. 7, if you win, comma, it was sideways of what they were doing. 8, that's it.